So I don't know if you guys remember that whole fiasco that John Jones had a few months back where he had an altercation with a woman named Crystal who was trying to get a doping test from him. But it turns out that John Jones is now being faced with a misdemeanor and possibly can serve jail time. And to be exact, for what he is being charged for, it's an assault, a petty misdemeanor, and interference with communications, which is also a misdemeanor. He has a virtual bond hearing scheduled for July 17th, which is tomorrow at 9:15 a.m. Mountain Time in New Mexico. And if he is convicted of these charges, he could face jail time for up to 1 year and possibly an $1,000 fine. So if you don't know exactly what happened in this incident, I made a whole video in the past talking about it, but I'll give you guys the cliff notes real quick. Basically what happened is John Jones was taking a nap during a birthday party, and a woman named Crystal Martinez and her husband or boyfriend at the time, I don't remember exactly, but they came in, they belonged to the UFC anti-doping agency. They came in to perform a routine random testing for John Jones. John Jones, once he was woken up from that slumber, he appeared to be very agitated. He got up, yelled obscenities at Crystal. I believe he took her phone and threw it or smashed it. He was cussing them out. He was insulting them. And it pretty much was an escalated situation. Now, this was enough for Crystal to feel terrified and that she was scared that John Jones might end up hitting her. And that pretty much led to this whole situation, all the articles that came out about John Jones, blah, blah, blah. Now, John Jones did issue a statement regarding this. He denies all the claims. He said that he did get upset with Crystal, but never at any point did he threaten her or get in her face. And he especially said that he did not assault anyone. Now, this case will be set for a bench trial in 30 to 45 days. So I guess any month or a month and a half from now, we will figure out what exactly happened maybe in this whole incident, which side was true. Did John Jones actually threaten her and terrify this woman, Crystal? Or was she making the whole thing up? Or maybe she just was exaggerating the whole situation. So I guess in the next month, month and a half, we will figure out exactly what happened. Now, I am an MMA channel. I do MMA content, and I will give you my take on what I think is going to happen to John Jones. Now, I do think it is pretty weird how this whole situation happened. John Jones did provide a video of him giving fist bumps to Crystal and her man, whatever relationship they have. I don't remember exactly what it is again. So it seemed like things ended on relatively good terms, whether she was terrified or not. She still felt comfortable enough to give him a fist bump. Now, that could have been out of fear, a way to not displease Jones. So we don't know exactly what was in her headspace at that time. It's just one little piece of evidence that we have to, I guess, make our own assumptions about things. But I think John Jones at this point now, if I'm being honest with you, John Jones is the kind of guy who you would believe to do this type of thing. Because again, we've had history of John Jones in the past. He's hit his wife, for God's sakes. There's a whole police report about that. If you haven't invested your time into looking into that police report about John Jones hurting his wife, I urge you to do so. Let's be real here. John Jones as a fighter is pretty good. He's a roid cheat though, but he's a pretty good fighter. But outside of the octagon as his own individual, he's a pretty scummy person. So there you guys go. That pretty much secures me a spot not on the jury for this trial. So I guess I will not be laying down the hammer on John Jones here. However, I can see how John Jones could do this type of thing. But this is all allegedly. I don't want to get sued by John Jones and his law firm or whatever his lawyers are. But if John Jones ends up having to serve actual jail time or ends up having to be delayed in his fight with Stipe Miocic, I think he should be stripped. There's no point in continuing to keep backing this guy and forcing him to be champion. He hasn't fought in, I believe, over a year now. And if at this point he has to sit out even longer, then I think the belt should be stripped from John Jones. And now I'm not only going down with that. John Jones at this point has been such a burden to the UFC. Dana White has even said that he is his biggest headache. At this point, what is John Jones's value to the UFC? Is he even benefiting the UFC? And I don't think he really is at this point. This guy has been one of the worst human beings outside of the sport. And that's the real question here. How long are the UFC going to continue with John Jones's idiocracy? Dana White was pounding the table, defending John Jones, calling him pound for pound number one, that he is the GOAT of the sport, and your GOAT does things like this, or what he has done in the past. To me now, this is somebody who is becoming bad for business. And if he has to sit out even longer and not fight Tom Aspinal, then he should be stripped. And now I know I am assuming Tom Aspinal does beat Curtis Blades here, but I don't think either one really matters. I think if Jon Jones is out here not doing anything, then he should be stripped. If he's out here going to jail for 1 year, then he should be stripped. And let's even say the UFC doesn't even strip Jon Jones, then I think at this point, throw the whole Stipe fight out the window and just make him fight Tom Aspinall if he beats Curtis Blades. And the reason I'm suggesting this is because let's say Tom Aspinall does go out there and he does beat Jon Jones. Then he will be the first guy to ever give Jon Jones his first legitimate on paper loss. And I think his name value can skyrocket from that. I think if Tom Aspinall beats Jon Jones, he becomes an absolute star in the sport. And if Jon Jones is out here assaulting your employees, doing steroids, cheating in the sport, doing some domestic stuff at home as well, and then what is the point of continuing to call Jon Jones your GOAT and giving him all of this support and backing behind him and making sure and treating him like the king of the UFC? I think at this point, there's more money made in a Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall fight than a Jon Jones versus Stipe fight. I think overall in the future, Tom Aspinall as champion, if he does beat Jon Jones, will continue to make more money for the UFC. I think the better investment right now, currently, today, is Tom Aspinall than Jon Jones, who again is a 38-year-old man who is one fight away from retiring. There's no point to continue to protect Jon Jones at this point if he's only going to be getting himself in trouble and making the UFC look stupid. And so now I think at this point, there's pretty much two options for the UFC. If this trial ends up being a whole lie from Crystal, she made the whole thing up or she exaggerated and nothing even happens to Jon Jones, then I guess you continue to do what you were doing before. That still annoys me a little bit, but if the UFC wants to continue to push Jon Jones to fight Stipe, then I guess do it, whatever. However, on the flip side, if this case ends up being the worst case scenario and he actually has to serve jail time, I don't think he will serve any jail time. Let's be real here. I think at worst, Jon Jones pays a fine and does some community service or is on house arrest. But let's just play devil's advocate and say he does go to jail, then strip him, promote Tom Aspinall to your undisputed champion, and move on with your chips behind Tom Aspinall. Hopefully he does beat Curtis Blades. And then if Jon Jones still wants to come back and fight in the UFC, make him fight Tom Aspinall. Otherwise, he's not fighting. And I think at the very, very least, because of this going to trial, I think the UFC should just outright stop protecting Jon Jones so much. I know I mentioned this before, but I think Jon Jones is the most protected fighter in the UFC right now. The UFC really, really respect him and want to make sure he gets his wishes. I think at this point, the UFC starts to treat Jon Jones like a normal UFC champion, like a Dricus du Plessis. Hell, even treat him like Aljamain Sterling when he fought Sean O'Malley. If you don't remember that fight, Aljo was pretty much forced to do a quick turnaround to fight Sean O'Malley, which Sean O'Malley won by second round TKO. I think at this point, do the same thing to Jon Jones, make him fight Tom Aspinall on a quick turnaround from his injury. I don't give a shit what you do. But that pretty much still all depends on what actually happens in this whole case. We'll see what happens in a month and a half from now at the most. Again, I think Jon Jones will be okay. I think he'll just get a fine and maybe do some community service and he'll be chilling at the worst. Maybe have to pay Crystal some money and that's really about it. But if he ends up serving actual jail time, then Jon Jones is cooked and he has to be stripped. I don't know. If you couldn't tell, I'm not the biggest fan of Jon Jones. I think he's a pretty awful person. I respect his fighting ability, but as a human being, as a person, he is absolute scum. He is trash. And I do think if the UFC looks into their financials, looks into what can make them the most money in the future, I think just not giving Jon Jones whatever he wants is probably in their best interest. Again, scrapping the whole Stipe versus Jones fight, I think is in their best interest, and I think he should be forced to fight the winner of Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades. I don't care which one. I think it will be Tom Aspinall, and I think it will be better for the UFC if it is Tom Aspinall. But I don't know, guys. That's pretty much it. Leave a take down below in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about this whole Jon Jones situation. I'm out of here, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications. I'll see y'all later. Peace.